drawing a really solid control shell. And the fact that, at least for a little while, players were caught very off guard by what the deck was up to. That accounted for a lot of wins as well. As time has gone on, people have gotten more information about it. They've seen the deck more frequently, so some of that advantage is gone, but still the base of card drawing, removal spells, Planeswalker is very solid.
Both players are going to start off with just some lands. Jessup has a Courser of Crewfix that he's going to put into play. Top card is a Bile-Blight. He'll pass the turn back. That one's basically dead in this matchup.
Exactly, and that's where the advantage of the Sultai deck comes in here, is Danny is going to see a lot of cards, at least game one, that have little to no value.
And there is another Bile-Blight. So not exactly where Jessup wants to be. Now, he does have a Windswept Teeth that he can play, sacrifice, and shuffle away the Bile-Blight. But what he's looking to do with his Coursers here in this matchup, and with this deck in general, is just to build a small incremental advantage.
Yeah.
He's going to come into the red zone with Courser here. Looks like Venable's going to take the 2 points of damage. Looks like the follow-up is going to be another Courser. We'll see if this does resolve. There is a Windswept Teeth, trigger both Coursers, so the Courser is in. 2 life coming for Jessup. And we'll just pass the turn back. Venable's going to sacrifice the blue to Delta. Yeah, if you're Jessup, you're just hoping you don't draw too many of the Bile-Blights of the world. If you can... stop yourself is the wrong term to use since you have no control for the most part. But, you know, if you can not draw End Hostilities or Bile-Blight, some of those bad cards, and draw your good ones, he might be able to steal the first game.
So you're looking at Murderous Cut, 3 Bile-Blights, and the End Hostilities that are the real dead cards here. Past that, there's some not very efficient cards. You get things like Abzan Charm, which they're not dead, but they're not high-impact cards. Hero's Downfall, much the same story, but the total number of cards in Danny's deck here, game one, that have little to no value is very high.
Windswept Teeth sacrificed, going to search up a Plains here. Danny wants to make sure that he's going to get his 2 life off the Courser in response to this Hero's Downfall. Well, he might search up a different land, looks like he might be going with a forest. Patrick, do you know where that forest is from?
Ice Age. Duh.
I wasn't sure. That's why I asked you, man. You don't have to make me feel stupid.
Well, that one, I mean, there's a bunch of snow on the ground. It's got the old frame.
All right, fine. You win this round. That's fine. I thought it would maybe Ice Age, but I couldn't remember.
Ice Age is before your time, right?
It's right when I started.
Oh, right when you started, okay.
My favorite card when I first started was Polar Kraken and Woolly Mammoth.
2 excellent choices.
Thank you very much. And I was actually personally scared of Giant Trapdoor Spider and the Woolly Spider.
I mean, Giant Trapdoor Spider is pretty frightening.
I don't know if those are both from Ice Age, but I was scared of both of them.
The Giant Trapdoor Spider definitely is.
Nice. Here comes the Courser. Windswept Teeth going to come in. There's Bile-Blight again.
Something else to be shuffled away.
That's for sure. Okay.
Yeah, pretty frightening art.
If they drew cards like this still, we wouldn't be able to sell any packs because kids would be afraid to play.
Yep.
Remove from the game target creature which doesn't have flying and is attacking you. And I have to lose the spider?
This is not a great template, just for the record.
Why do I have to lose the spider?
Probably for power level reasons. Pretty annoying if this just sits in play, eating every attacker for the entire game.
Oh, I guess it's... Okay, yeah. I could see that. I could see that, because it kills creatures that don't have flying. They would just keep eating them. They would keep running into the trap.
Correct.
That's good flavor.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Little Thoughtseize, Abzan Charm. Thoughtseize on top of the deck, of course. We know that because of Courser. Hero's Downfall as well. Hero's Downfall, a fine draw, because this deck has Planeswalkers. You're not excited, but Planeswalkers how they win.
You want one as an insurance policy, but you don't want to be having a bunch of them glutting your hand.
Yeah.
Because eventually the Sultai deck draws so many cards and finds counter spells and discard spells that having a handful of reactive cards is not going to help you very much.
3 p.m. challenge.
Now, Abzan Charm is a card that plays a huge role, as does Read the Bones, because that's a way for Jessup to be able to keep up on cards with this sort of deck.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to fire for Thoughtseize. Venable very quickly sacrificing Polluted Delta, so he's going to have a response.
Even by the standards of Gerard's Sultai deck, this is a pretty slow opening here for Michael.
Hasn't really done very much.
Hasn't really responded to Danny's board very much here. Hasn't been drawing a bunch of cards. No Planeswalkers as of yet.
We're going to go through time, I see. Dig through time being cast here by Venable, so he'll take a look at the top 7. Take 2 with him. The rest will go on the bottom. Murderous Cut among the cards that Michael is looking at.
In a spot like this where the game's on a pretty slow pace, I think Michael's best served by just taking 2 high-impact cards. Garrett can take through time, definitely qualify.
No, it looks like he's going to go with. The other ones are going to go to the bottom. Just Baneful Stroke of Thoughts, he's a Swamp, all that jazz. Bioblight too. Cards that are fine but don't play a huge role like the 2 that are in his hand. Michael will show off his hand. The Dig Through Time and the Garrett we'll see probably pretty quickly here. Opulent Palace, Hero's Downfall, Temple of Malady, Polluted Delta, another Palace, so not a great hand.
And this would explain why Michael has not been doing very much, because his hand has very little to do. Wants to save the Downfall for something more significant than the Courser because his hand is so light on action. Doesn't really care that much about Danny getting a little bit of card advantage off of some lands off the top of his deck. He wants to save that for something like Siege Rhino or a Planeswalker.
We'll see what Danny's going to select here. He's going to go Dig Through Time. So that's gone. See what else Jessup wants to do. Easy part is attacking, so he's going to get that out of the way. Venable's going to go down to 12. Looks like another Courser. Play his land for the turn. Planes off the top of the deck. Murder's Cut will be the draw step next turn. Again, not great. He's got to work through these bad draw steps.
Yeah.
Ashiok the draw here from Michael.
You know, drawing the cards is really nice. Getting the extra lands off of Courser is really nice, but it doesn't quite make up for all the dead draws that Danny has over the course of a game.
And there's a Swamp off the Polluted Delta there for Venable. Michael's in kind of this obscure spot where I imagine he wants to deploy Ashiok, but I would actually prefer if Danny drew that Murderous Cut instead of milling him.
Exactly.
You know? But if he doesn't activate Ashiok, then it would just die to the 2 Coursers that are in play.
I mean, he has the option of just not casting it.
I suppose that's true. Siege Rhino among the cards that have been found here. So there is a Rhino that's going to be exiled by Ashiok. Top card's Llanowar Waste. Pass the turn back. Hero's Downfall at the ready. Jessup will draw Llanowar Waste. Top card of the deck, Courser. He's found all of those. Doesn't look too thrilled with the contents of his hands. Got to figure out a game plan now.
He can try to go after Ashiok and use a pump spell to finish off this turn, but it plays right into a removal spell that Danny knows that Michael already has in Hero's Downfall. Probably not the end of the world here if, you know, you knock Ashiok down to 1, Danny takes up again, and then you kill it the following turn.
And Danny doesn't want to use a Hero's Downfall that he has in his hand because he knows about the Garrett that's over there.
Exactly.
So Ashiok actually one of the better draws here for Venable in this situation just because it kind of causes a bit of a headache here for Jessup. And Jessup does have an Abzan Charm. And it looks like he's going to be drawing 2 cards. Courser the top card. Next one's Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is a doozy. Sandsep Citadel on top of the deck. Keep in mind, Jessup hasn't played a land yet.
4 copies of Thoughtseize in Danny's list. We've seen this number fluctuate a little bit, but playing the more controlling build of the deck, not surprising to see him go with the full allotment of Thoughtseizes.
Now it's time to continue to craft a game plan. How does he want to attack? Does he even care about Ashiok, for example?
I feel like with a Siege Rhino down, it's worth sending at least one attacker towards SCGHOU.
Does he want to lead with Thoughtseize or play Thoughtseize after combat? Looks like he wants to go after combat, so here come the creatures. The goal is just to try to contain this SCGHOU since he can't kill it this turn.
And keep in mind, Michael now knows about the Thoughtseize. So before he may be inclined to say, okay, SCGHOU goes down to 1, if he's going to Thoughtseize and just Hero's Downfall in response, he may now do it inside of combat. It looks like he's not doing that and allowing SCGHOU to go down to 1, but knowing about the Thoughtseize does change whether or not Michael wants to do anything about the downfall inside of combat.
Another Courser. 3 in play, 1 in the graveyard. Trigger the Coursers. Jessup's going to gain 3 life for just a moment, because he has to take 1 to cast this, and then, of course, Thoughtseize resolving is another 2. But who cares about that, because he gets to take a card.
So now if Michael draws Crux of Fate, the whole game gets swung around.
Yep. It's bad news all around. And he's got 2 to draw to. Take a draw step. Temple of Malady is not Crux of Fate. Elevator goes up on SCGHOU. Santhef Citadel, Knobs on Charmin, and Elspeth are exiled. Top card, Land Over Waste. Here's a Temple for Michael. That card goes to the bottom very quickly. Did not like what he saw. So just a Hero's Downfall is a spell that's castable for Venable. He'll have to pass the turn back to Jessup. Jessup will draw that copy of Land Over Waste. Hero's Downfall on top of the deck. Again, not great, but a nice safety net.
Exactly. You know, Michael's going to have to catch up here with Planeswalkers at some point, and Danny does have a lot of pressure in play.
Red zone we go. Coursers will take care of SCGHOU. Siege Rhino will remain exiled. And Jessup will just pass the turn back as Venable will draw. It's a copy of Thoughtseize. Looks like he's going to play it. Jessup will show you a hand of Temple of Malady, Windswept Teeth, Hero's Downfall, and Bioblight.
This 2 damage is significant because it means that Michael goes down to 9, and if he takes 6 from the Coursers, means now Siege Rhino is lethal. So this may force Michael's hand here into Hero's Downfalling inside of combat, but even that's not great because his 1 out in this spot is Crux of Fate. He'd rather hold the downfall.
Or border the top card of Jesse's deck. So Danny will gain some life. Get that card out of his deck. Bioblight, there it is again. Here's an attack for 6 from Jessup. And I'm with you. I don't think Venable wants to cast Hero's Downfall, but I think he has to.
Yeah, this is rough because he's still playing towards Crux of Fate. But I suppose now something like Dig Through Time into 1 removal spell gives him a shot.
Let him waste the draw step. All you can do is play an Opulent Palace, pass the turn back. Jessup's top card is Read the Bones. There's an attack for 4. Venable's down to 1. Windswept Teeth will come in, triggers. There are some big draws here for Michael. He's got to find one, though. It's a Thoughtseize. That isn't one of them. And Danny Jessup's going to win game number 1 here over Michael Venable. Obs on mid-range up a game over Sultai Control, where the Sultai Control player didn't do much of anything.
Exactly, and that's a big win there for Danny because he gets to cut a lot of his creature removal when we move to sideboards.
The sideboards is where we will go, and we will start with Michael and his 2 Tassigers, to Silence the Believers, 2 copies of Feed the Clan, a Drown in Sorrow, 2 Negates, a Hero's Downfall, a Bioblight, a Farika's Cure, an Necropolis Fiend, 2 copies of Rashasha Death Dealer, and a Prolic Ancient. Very reminiscent of what Gerard was doing in Washington, D.C., as well as during his regional championship run. A lot of creatures.
And I could see, for example, the two Negates coming in and the Hero's Downfall for sure. I'm a little skeptical of bringing in any of the creatures. I think normally they're there assuming your opponent's going to cut their creature removal. But since we know Danny isn't going to cut cards like Hero's Downfall and Abzan Charm, cards like Tassiger are not going to be reliable in this matchup. Maybe they're still worth bringing in because some of his other cards aren't that efficient, but you're not going to be able to catch Danny by surprise because the nature of his removal means he's going to have some access to it regardless.
What do we have on Jessup's side?
3 Drown in Sorrow, 2 Glare of Heresy, 2 Read the Bones, an Utter End, a Tassiger, a Murderous Cut, a Garrick, and Erase, a Bioblight, and a Johnny Mentor of Heroes, and a Nissa World Waker. I like getting the Planeswalkers in there I like the additional copy of Tassicker as well, the 2-copy of Read the Bones. More card advantage, both in card drawing spells and planeswalkers.
I think game 1 was just so important for Jessup to win.
Yes, it's such a huge deal because you saw the end of the game there, his hands just bio blights. He has a lot of dead cards. Now, post-board, he'll still have some cards that aren't going to be good 100% of the time, like Hero's Downfall, but he's not going to be stuck with things as narrow as bio blight.
These players are going to sideboard shuffle up, and game number 2 will be underway here shortly. But as we announced during Indianapolis, the Open Series will be on pause for a week in August, but for a very good reason, because we're going across the pond. We're going to London.
Very exciting. This is going to be occurring the week after the Open in Washington, D.C. It's going to be a standard Grand Prix in London from August 14th through 16th. Now, keep in mind, we're not rolling out that much information just yet. We have Grand Prix Miami coming up very soon and Grand Prix Charlotte before London as well. But as we get closer to the event, we're going to be rolling out more information. Incredibly excited to be bringing this event to you. The first time that Star City Games has ever hosted a tournament this large outside the United States, and we couldn't be more excited about it.
Nah, I don't work in organized play. I don't organize the events. I just comment on the games that are in front of me. But I've seen what the old Star City office can do when they want to blow out an event, and I have to imagine they're going to do something special for London.
I would have to imagine so. You know, the first couple Grand Prix that Star City gets, that's a big deal. And then there's some that occur, like Charlotte, for example, at the time the biggest limited Grand Prix, in New Jersey, Legacy Grand Prix, and Legacy's a format very close to Star City Games, where we've really brought out all the bells and whistles. And I would anticipate London will get much the same treatment.
I don't even know what I'm going to do when I'm going to go. I don't know what I'm supposed to go see. Outside of the big clock.
Yep.
That's all I know. You know what?
Parliament.
London has a very poor reputation for food. Apparently, the food there is not very good. But I'm going to go with an open mind. I bet the food's better there than people give it credit for.
Okay. My experiences have not been great. It's really my only one critique of the city. But there's a lot to see and a lot to do.
All right, well, I'm going to put you in charge of that. I'm a really, really bad overseas traveler. I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
There's just something about going to a city like London where your sense of history is just a lot different. In the United States, when you see a building that's been around since the 1750s, you think that's a really old building, that's a historical monument. When you go to cities like London, you see things that have existed for 1,000 years. It's a much different perspective. It's very cool.
Well, I'm going to put you in charge.
Of sightseeing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like you know the stuff to do. What are the name of the guys who wear the hats and can't talk?
The guards? I don't know.
Yeah.
I know they have some sort of...
They have a title. And I'm allowed to like mess with them, and they can't mess with me back.
That's... I think that's technically true, but it's bad form.
Well, I've watched some movies where you can do that, so it's got to be true.
Right.
I've seen like Euro Trip or whatever,
Yep.
so.
It's a documentary based on traveling around Europe.
Yeah. So I figure I would be able to do that.
Yeah, I would probably not test those waters.
Okay.
And I'm not bailing you out of whatever trouble you get into.
Oh, come on.
They called
Really?
They called like bobbies or billies or something like that. There's some slang term for the guards. I can't remember what they are.
I'll have to look this up in time for the podcast.
Yeah.
I see. I will not. I've been working on my London impression, but I will not do it here.
Yep. That's good.
Gonna hold that back. Still a lot of work to be done.
Got
My
6
London
months.
accent.
You got 6 months. You
Plenty
got
of time.
A long time.
Plenty of time. I'm gonna have to watch some Frank Caliendo videos. See if I can learn something from the master.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Okay. Looks like both players gonna go a little bit lower in cards here. Not a Frank guy, huh?
He's medium funny, but not really my thing. Impersonation humor is just not that funny to me.
You're a tough crowd to entertain.
Yep. It's
There's a
true.
Very high bar for entertainment.
There's enough people who are taking care of the low bar responsibility that I feel that I could be a little more cautious about what I choose to entertain myself with.
Here is an opulent palace to start off game number 2. Sandstorm Citadel here for Jessup, so both players leading off with Tri-Lands. A Temple of Deceit will allow Venable to keep its top card on top as we head back Jessup's way.
Much more solid hand for Michael here, although this Thoughtseize might do a lot of damage here with more action than we saw from him in game 1.
Hey, you see Venable's hand. He's got a Kiora, a Disdainful Stroke, a Hero's Downfall, a Temple of Malady, and a Yavmayakos. Keep in mind, he did keep the card on top with Temple of Deceit, so that's the one thing that we don't know. Danny doesn't know. The only one who knows is Michael.
And because he already has untapped lands, number 3 and 4 to go along with the Kiora, it's most likely a spell. I think at this stage, Michael would scry a land to the bottom.
Well, Kiora's going to bite the dust. Windswept Teeth there for Jessup, and just a passing of the turn. Venable will draw. Let's copy Hero's Downfall. There's you off Maya Coast. There's a passing of the turn. Have the option to play a Temple. Would want to leave his mana available to fire off the Downfall in case something like Courser comes to play. But Jessup just has a Temple of his own. It looks to be a difficult scry here as Danny's going to consult his hand. He'll leave that card on top.
See a lot of removal spells on top of the 2 coursers, which is not bad for Danny, but this is the type of game where he may end up light on pressure, and then the dig through times and the Sultai control decks do a lot of damage.
You saw the Temple from Venable before passing the turn back over to Jessup. Danny will sacrifice a Windswept Heath. It's a forest or a plains here in just a moment. And it is a plains. That one's from Ice Age.
You got it.
Thank you. I know that one.
The clue is the snow.
Yes. Yeah. Figured it out on my own, though. Thank you. There's a Courser. Take a look at the top card, Abzan Charm. Hero's Downfall will take care of the Courser. We're heading back Michael's way. Thoughtseize the draw. Thoughtseize is what he's going to cast. Jessup will show a hand of Thoughtseize. Looks like a Tasigur. 2 copies of Utter End and a Courser.
And I would imagine that Michael's going to take Thoughtseize out of his hand, maybe one of the 2 threat cards, and just try to play a top deck game against Danny where Michael has access to more powerful cards and dig through time.
Has a counterspell too?
Yep.
So you would go with a Thoughtseize, but we'll see what Venable wants to go with. I like the Thoughtseize plan, though.
Because all the plays that Danny has access to are, Michael can currently answer them, and it takes up Danny's entire turn. So I think you leave him with Tasigur, leave him with Courser, make him spend his whole turn doing that when they don't amount to very much. The Thoughtseize you can easily slide into a turn where you're doing another thing, and I think that's the tiebreaker there.
And Venable does select the Thoughtseize. And the follow-up is a Temple. Top card going to stay on top. We'll head back Jessup's way. Jessup will draw. Copy of Abzan Charm. We knew that was coming. Doesn't look like he's in love with it, but he might have to cast it. 2 options here between Courser and Abzan Charm. He's going to go with Courser. Take a look at the top card. It's a Windswept Heath. That's a hit. It'll come in, trigger, and allow him to gain a life. Hero's Downfall could be the draw next turn, or he may want to shuffle away with the Heath. We'll find out, as there's Hero's Downfall. Now, what I always find interesting in a situation like this is Jessup wants to sacrifice his fetch land so he can get his life. We know that. But does he want to sacrifice his fetch land and reveal the top card of his deck and give away the information of what it is?
Well, I think the bigger factor is Danny doesn't know if he wants to draw Hero's Downfall yet or not. What Michael does on his turn will give Danny that information. So I think it's worth not shuffling there. The 1 life does not matter very much against this control deck at all. And on top of that, you don't know if you want the Downfall yet or not.
Well, there is a Thoughtseize. Abzan Charm, Tasigur. 2 copies of Utter End. I've got a feeling he's going to go with Abzan Charm.
I'm not actually sure. You might say, I'm going to take your Tasigur, allow you to draw some cards, but you only have so many that matter, and Disdainful Stroke covers most of them.
Fair. Did go with Abzan Charm, however, as Jessup's going to sacrifice a Windswept Teeth, dig a forest out of his deck.
Like, the problem now, from that side of the table, I totally understand the argument you're making.
Sure.
The other side of it is now, Danny's going to cast Tasigur. That has to be Disdainful Stroked, and now you have nothing. If you take Tasigur, Danny might Abzan Charm him into very little. He might miss some draw steps for a while, and your Disdainful Stroke still catches the follow-up play.
Take a look at the draw. Well, it's an angry rhino.
And this is sort of what I alluded to. Now, he's drawn a threat card this turn. You only have your 1 answer card, so something proactive is going to resolve on Danny's side of the table.
Which way do you lead out?
Probably the Siege Rhino.
Yeah.
I think Tasigur is a bigger prize here with Michael running low on resources. If this gets countered and then Tasigur resolves, you draw a land next turn, you can delve your Tasigur into play. You have enough mana left over to start activating it, and Michael might just be out of the game. He has no hand, so.
Let's see what Michael draws. Didn't get a great look at it. He just got to pass the turn back. Jessup will draw a copy of Abzan Charm. That might change some things now, too. He might just want to Charm instead of playing Tasigur. I guess he can do both in the same turn. It seems like a pretty close play here.
I think that I prefer leading with Abzan Charm because if he draws untapped land plus Thoughtseize, he's probably better served doing that. Because if the coast is clear for Tasigur, that's going to be hard for Michael to beat in this spot.
There is Tasigur. There's a Dissolve. And Michael keeps the top card on top very quickly. So now the question is, does Jessup want to take the opportunity to resolve this Abzan Charm while the shields are down? The answer is yes. So he'll pay 2 light to draw 2 cards. Picked up a Thoughtseize and a Hero's Downfall. This is kind of what you alluded to as well. If he casts the Charm first, maybe it resolves, then he gets to cast the Thoughtseize.
Yeah. Or the Charm gets countered, and then your Tasigur is good to go, which is really what Danny was trying to work towards the whole time.
Dig Through Time was a draw for Venable. Now Jessup does have a Thoughtseize, but makes you wonder if he wants to cast it now or not. What's interesting about this exchange is that Venable very quickly kept with his Scry, and then drew a card, and then just said go. So he's going to respond to this Siege Rhino with a Dig Through Time.
There's a lot of cards that Michael could keep in that spot, though. I think he would have probably kept Crux of Fate. He would have kept Dissolve or another counterspell, but this is probably the worst case scenario for Danny here as Dig Through Time is the type of card that Michael needs to just get enough tools to work with.
Well, time to take a look at the top 7. And Michael will select 2 of them. Dissolve is one option. Dig Through Time is another.
Dissolve and Dig Through Time is about as good as you can script it up here for Michael.
Yeah, not
another
bad at
answer
all.
card, another card in the graveyard, another dig to load back up, while Danny is glutted with a hand of Utter Ends.
There is a Dissolve. Michael will have to pay 1 thanks to the Avamaya Coast to cast it, but problem solved. Temple of Mystery goes to the bottom from the Scry. And we're going to be heading back Michael's way now. Polluted Delta the draw. He's going to play that and pass the turn back. Jessup will draw. Temple of Silence. It's time for a Thoughtseize. Michael's going to sacrifice that Polluted Delta. We'll see a Dig Through Time here in just a sec.
Yep. But you can see Danny's hand, not very much left over here, some reactive cards. He does have answers to Planeswalkers, but counter spells and card drawing spells that Michael draws from this spot are going to be very good for him.
I've been told by the powers that be on Twitter that I should not mess with the guards in London.
Okay. You were led astray by Eurotrip?
As you said, I thought it was a documentary.
Yeah.
So. Seven cards here yet again. Ashiok an option. Thoughtseize 2. This dig not as good as the previous one.
Nope. But Danny's still not really doing anything.
Yep. Looks like Venable will be selecting Ashiok and Thoughtseize. And now the Thoughtseize will resolve on Jessup's side, so he'll have to choose between one of these 2 cards. We'll take Ashiok. There's a Temple. Take a look at the top card. Leaves it on top, pass the turn back. Silence will be with the draw here for Venable. Does he want to fire off Thoughtseize? He knows 2 of the cards in Jessup's hand.
Yeah, and at this point, what else is going on in that hand? I suppose he could be concerned about Elspeth, and he doesn't have an answer to it right now, so I guess Thoughtseizing here is fine.
But Jessup's hand is very redundant. 2 Utter Ends will be left over. Hero's Downfall is gone. Elspeth the draw. Fair enough. This is Ashiok it is. He'll get 1 activation, because Utter End's going after that. Sandstep Citadel, Windswept Heath, and Nissa will be exiled. Utter End says, please leave. That'll work. Jessup will draw. Read the Bones. Not an untapped land, but it's pretty good prize.
Yeah, this is the next best thing for Danny here.
So he'll scry 2. Courser and Read the Bones. Those are hard to pass up, I think.
I'm fine with putting Courser on the bottom and drawing Read the Bones. I'm just not giving up Read the Bones against a deck like Sultai Control.
I wouldn't want to give that up either. I like Courser a little bit in that situation, not a ton. Opulent Pal is going to come into play.
Courser's a lot easier for Michael to just kill, is the thing.
Abzan Charm has been picked up now too, so Danny at 11, he's got enough life to work with where he can draw some more cards here and pay some life to do so. He'll play another Read the Bones. It's going to go down to 9. Garrick and a Hoof and a Siege Rhino. 2 threats.
I'll take Siege Rhino and put the Garrick on the bottom, but it looks like Danny just wants to find lands.
He found some all right. Forest and Llanowar Ways. There's a Forest. Pass that turn back over to Venable. Venable will draw. It's just a swamp. Has enough mana right now, 7 in play, to play Silence of the Believers and kick it. Here's Abzan Charm. Jessup down to 7. And a draw. It's a Plains. This is what makes Abzan mid-range really tough to play against. It's a deck that can actually keep up with you on cards, even though it has no blue mana.
It can convert into this sort of strategy. And I think that's a nice thing that R&D has done over the last couple of years. Card advantage like this used to just be the sole domain of blue. Blue still gets the best rate and the cleanest card drawing spells like Divination and Jason's Ingenuity, but it's not the sole domain of blue anymore. And there's so many powerful Magic decks historically that have just been trade, draw cards, kill you some arbitrary way. And making sure that other colors have access to that play pattern, I think, is a pretty important thing. Or at least that there's not just one color that's doing it.
Looks like Michael's going to go digging through time. That was his draw for the turn. So again, look at the top 7. Take 2 with him. See, life total is 12 to 7 in favor of Venable. But the reason that Jessup's life total is so low is because he's been using his life to draw cards.
But Michael is not going to punish him at all for that.
No. Looks like Ashiok negated the selections here for Venable. Now here is Ashiok. Elevator going up, it's Courser. The Caves, make it 2 Caves. That'll be exiled. I'll go back over to Jessup. He'll take a draw step. Temple of Malady is what he's found.
But Ashiok is pretty good news here for Danny, as he can just keep it contained with his tokens and still set up a kill all in one turn with Elspeth's ultimate.
Also has a copy of Utter End in hand, depending on how he wants to use it. Now we know Venable has a copy of Negate in hand. So a little game of cat and mouse there, perhaps.
Danny could also just play a land and play Ugin.
If he has an untapped one.
Yeah, he's got a land war waste. He could just do that too.
Sure. Got some things to weigh into the equation.
Ugin allows him to finish off the Ashiok this turn if he's concerned about it.
Looks like he's not going to go that route. He's going to go the Utter End route, it seems. Yep.
Sure. This seems fine too. Hard to use Utter Ends profitably against Michael's deck, so if you get a good spot to do it, you might as well.
Elspeth's going to take up to 6. 3 more soldier tokens coming. And Jessup will pass the turn back over to Venable. Venable's going to need a big draw here. Hero's Downfall is okay. Not entirely sure that's what the doctor ordered, though.
Yeah, he can now negate the next Planeswalker. He can downfall this Elspeth, but he still needs to answer the board, and he doesn't have that much time to do it.
Well, there's Hero's Downfall. That'll take care of Elspeth. Silence of Believers and Negate in hand. Back Jessup's way. He'll untap those lands and those creatures, take a draw step. Temple of Malady. In for 6. And I imagine Michael has very little interest in casting Silence of Believers here.
Yeah,
I think he's thinking about it.
He needs to play to, things like Bile-Blight or Crux of Fate. Killing 2 of the tokens here or 1 of the tokens here doesn't do very much for him long term. And tapping out may also open the door for something worse.
And Jessup with another Elspeth in hand. He's going to go with that. And there's Negate. Temple Malady Post. Top card becomes the bottom. Jessup will pass it back to Venable. Venable will draw. Looks like a polluted Delta to me. A little bit of math here from Venable.
Can't kill 3 things.
There's his Delta. He'll pass the turn back. Jessup going to untap and draw. I'm sure he'll take a moment to figure things out, but he's going to attack with everybody, and that's going to get the job done. Dane Jessup's going to win this match over Michael Venable. 2-0. Obzon midrange takes care of Sultai Control rather easily, may I add.
Well, Michael was never in a position to do anything with his Planeswalkers. Danny had too many Utter Ends and Heroes Downfalls for that. And with Thoughtseize, Obzon Charm, Read the Bones, was able to keep up with Michael